Hello everyone, I'm Mulkh Pasricha and I'm going to talk about a topic that has shaped the lives of millions of families, including my own. The Partition of India in 1947. Partition isn't just a historical event in textbooks. It is an event that has left scars that are still raw for many, even more after more than 75 years. For my family and countless others, partition wasn't just about the division of land, but the division of lives, of memories, and a sense of home. Today, I will explore the ongoing impact of partition not only from a historical perspective, but also from the deeply human and emotional side of it. I'll be sharing some of my own family story, including a poignant interview I had with my grandfather who lived through those harrowing days of 1947. His memories, the trauma, and the resilience he showed in rebuilding his life from scratch in India offer a window into the experiences of millions of other refugees. When I began writing an article about partition, it wasn't just an intellectual exercise, it was personal. You see, my family was directly affected by the partition of India. They fled from what is now Pakistan, leaving behind their homes, their livelihoods, and a piece of their identity. My grandfather, who was a young teenager at that time, was one of the millions who experienced this massive upheaval. He tells us stories about his life before 1947, living in Lyallpur, which is now Faisalabad in Pakistan. He describes it as a place where people from different religions lived side by side as neighbors and friends. But that harmony shattered when the border lines were drawn. Overnight, friends became enemies, and families who lived in the same home for generations were forced to flee, carrying nothing but the hope of survival. I've always wanted to understand more about this, not just as a history, but as a legacy that has been passed down through generations. And I realized something while working on this article: the impact of partition didn't end with those who lived through it. It is a wound that has been inherited and felt by their children, their grandchildren, including me. That is why I felt compelled to write about this. To give this article a more personal touch, I decided to include an interview with my grandfather, who, like many others, had to make the impossible decision to leave his home and start over in a strange new land. He was just a teenager when he and his family escaped Lyallpur as violence erupted around them. With the help of the military, they managed to flee India, leaving behind everything they knew: their home, their friends, and a lifetime of memories. In our conversation, he spoke about that day with haunting clarity. He described rivers of blood, the lifeless bodies on the streets, and the unbearable uncertainty of not knowing whether his family would survive. But even in the face of all that horror, there was a profound sense of resilience in his voice, a determination to move forward. He said something during the interview that really struck with me. We lost everything, but we fled with the hope of returning one day. That hope, even if it's unfulfilled, was what kept him going. My grandfather's story is not unique. It is a story of millions who were displaced, many of whom never saw their homes again. They had to rebuild new lives in India or Pakistan, often with little more than the clothes on their backs. They were a refugee in their own land, and yet they survived. They rebuilt, they adapted, and their resilience is a testament to the spirit of humanity. When I was writing this article, I didn't just want to focus on the historical facts of partition. Yes, it was one of the largest migrations in human history. Yes, it did lead to the creation of two countries, India and Pakistan. But that's only one part of the story. The real story for me is about the human cost. It's about the people, like my grandfather, who had to rebuild their lives from scratch. It's about the trauma that still lingers today, not just for those who lived through it, but for their descendants like me. Partition wasn't just a one time event, its ripple effect has spanned generations, shaping identities, families, and even politics on both sides of the border. It's that lingering pain that I wanted to explore in this article. How do you rebuild your life after losing everything? How do you move forward when the past weighs so heavily on you? For many families, the trauma of partition has become a part of their DNA. It's not just a story that they heard from their grandparents. It's a part of who they are. For me, hearing my grandfather's story, his sorrow for the friends he left behind, his hope of returning one day, brought home the emotional weight of partition in a way that no history book could ever. But this article is not just about trauma, it's also about resilience. It's, a how, it's about how people like my grandfather and millions others found the strength to rebuild their lives. Even though they were uprooted from everything they knew, they didn't give up. My grandfather went to start a new life in Delhi, raising a family and creating a new sense of home, even while carrying the weight of his past with him. And that's the central theme of the article, the enduring impact of partition, both the pain and the resilience. While the trauma is undeniable, so is the strength that emerged from it. And that's why I felt motivated to write about it. It's a story that needs to be told, not just for the survivors, but for the generations that have inherited this legacy. I think that this is why this topic resonates with so many people, especially in India and Pakistan. The scars of partition are still visible today in the politics, in the way the communities interact, and in the stories passed down through families. But there's also a lesson in resilience, in how people can rebuild their life even after losing everything. And I think that's a lesson that we all can take with us. History is not just about the past, it's about how the past continues to shape us today. The story of partition is not over. Its effects are still felt in the lives of millions, including people like me, whose families were uprooted by the event. But by sharing these stories and by acknowledging the trauma and the resilience, we can start to heal some of those old wounds. And I would like to thank you for joining me on this personal journey through one of the most significant events in modern history. And I hope my article gives you some insight into the lasting impact of partition.